Sure. Thank you. By the way, the record will be done, and the recorded. This record will be published on the platform of Sociological Association of Ukraine. It is really my great pleasure to welcome you to this special session of the fifth Congress of the Sociological Association of Ukraine, devoted to discussion of the exponential challenges to societies and sociology. My name, I will not present myself, but I would like to say that it is an honor to me to co-moderate today's discussion together with my bright colleague and co-author, Dr. Tetiana Kostiuchenko from the National University of Kyiv Mogila Academy and the Freie University of Berlin. And by the way, I am a vice president of the Sociological Association of Ukraine and present also the Institute of Sociology of the National Academy of Science of Ukraine and the Technical University of Berlin. This session is both an intellectual continuation and an institutional deepening of shaped scholarly journal. Over the past 3 years, our Taiwanian colleague at Academia Sinica, especially Professor Chin-Joy J. Chen, Professor Hor Luin Wang, and Professor Paul Jobin, have created a unique, absolutely unique transnational platform where researchers from East Asia and Eastern Europe come together to think comparatively about war, security, memory, and societal transformation in the context of the Russian invasion to Ukraine. And workshops in Taipei in 2023 and 2025 were not only academically rich, but also profoundly formative for many of us, for me too. They gave rise to the collective monograph we are now completing and to the analytical vocabulary that united our collaboration today. Our propose in this session is twofold. First, to present new conceptual and empirical results emerging from our collaborative work, and the second, to place them into a broader comparative dialogue across regions that are rarely studied together, yet face surprisingly parallel challenges: authoritarian pressure, geopolitical threat, contested memories, and the long afterlives of war. Today's program reflects this ambition. Unfortunately, we will not begin our session with Professor Horlun Wong's keynote, who is working at powerful reconceptualization of the war society nexus. His dual-late model of primary and secondary war frames developed from Goffman and Butler and maybe Malashevich give us a language for analyzing how war both speaks through lived experience and is spoken about through institutionalized interpretations. He is not able to join us today. And unfortunately, I don't see till now our next speaker, Professor Kwon-Huik-min from the Southern Korea, who we expect that he will be able to show how the unending war on the Korean Peninsula continues to shape identity, political conflict, and social trauma. A perspective that offers sovereign lessons for Ukraine as we confront the long temporal horizon of post-war reconstruction and reconciliation. Uh, Possibly he will join later and will take into account this possibility to include his presentation into our agenda later. Next on our agenda is I believe the bright presentation by Paul Jobin with co-authors from Japan who will take us to Japan examining securitization and the transformation of post-war pacifism. The analysis of audience reception, fear, and reframing in Okinawa can illustrate how Russia's invasion of Ukraine has reverberated throughout East Asia and reshaped political imagination far from Europe. Our next presenter is Professor Diana. How is it correct? More correctly? In any way, okay. Professor Diana Janusauskiene, who addresses how Russia's war has reshaped the framing of Eastern Europe and national security debates within the European Union. Next, Joshua Lin and Professor Jay Chen, as co-author, present striking new evidence from China showing how long-term state ideology shapes support for Russia's aggression and for military action toward Taiwan. And Josh Wenger, who is co-author, analyze the evolving social foundation of trust in Taiwan's military, a key dimension of societal resilience. And we are delighted to welcome Professor, once more, delighted to welcome Professor Mikolaj Czesnik from Warsaw, whose contribution examines Poland's social military potential and public readiness to defend the country. His presentation brings essential comparative insights from a frontline NATO state deeply affected by the war in Ukraine. Unfortunately, we will not be able to have the presentation by Kaya Gadowska due to she is overloaded by different obligations, and she had the bright presentation yesterday at the plenary session of our Congress. Across this contribution, several themes recur. How societies frame war as event, threat, legacy, or horizon. How trust in state and civic institutions evolves under pressure. How authoritarian messaging or democratic debates shape attitudes toward conflicts, and how security is always simultaneously material and symbolic. For Ukraine, these questions are not merely analytical, they are existential. For Taiwan, Korea, Japan, Poland, Lithuania, and possibly other countries, they are increasingly urgent. And for sociologists, they challenges us to rethink our toolkit. War is no longer an external shock, but a persistent condition that reorganizes social life far beyond the battlefield. I am deeply grateful to all speakers for joining us. and I hope this session, our session, will deepen the collaboration already formed in Taipei, inspire new comparative questions, and contribute to our shared monograph and collective research agenda for future. So we look forward to an engaging and intellectually rich discussion also. Thank you, and let us begin. And now it is my great pleasure to hand the floor to my colleague Tetiana Kostiuchenko, who will chair our session. Please.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in the morning or in the afternoon on Friday. And just a few issues on how we organize our work. Since we have 5 papers, I will be decisive in the suggestion to organize it in one track. Not in 2 panels, as it was initially planned in the program, so that we have around 15 minutes for presentation and then around 10 minutes for the Q&A for each paper following the presentation. Does anyone okay with that? Is it okay with everyone? Yeah, okay. And when you are presenting, you are very much welcome to share the slides if you have some. For this reason, you need to use the share button in the bottom of the screen, the green one. If you have any troubles with sharing your slides, please tell me and I will try to help in technical matters. Also, if there are any questions, immediate questions to the presentation of a presenter, you can share the questions in the chat and I will read them out after the presentation. However, also you can keep the questions until the presentation is done, and then we have around 10 minutes for Q&A for each paper. Just in the matter of timing, we all, as people in academia, might talk for hours about the topics we explore. So in case you take much more than 20 minutes, I will make a kind of a hint that the time is over and that you have to wrap up your presentation. So don't be frustrated if I suddenly unmute myself and tell you that the time is over. That just means the time for the paper presentation, nothing more. So, okay. And let's begin with Paul's paper, the paper of Paul, Jobin, and co-authors, which is titled Securitization and the Reframing of Post-War Japan, Halfway to Go. So the floor is yours, please. Yeah, just unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, I thought we would start with Ukraine and South Korea, but I understand that, okay, you want to move from the Far East to the closer East. Okay, so let me look for my paper. I did prepare some slides. Okay. Share. It doesn't work.
The sharing of the slide doesn't work?
No.
Do you press this green button share and it shows you the screen and it doesn't work?
Yes.
Well, the option of multiple.
Oh, okay. I got it. I got it.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Oh. Yeah.
Do you see something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, wonderful.
So I compared to the previous workshop, I changed the title. I don't know if you like this one. Silke, the editor of the journal, suggested me to add a sociology for referencing issues. So this is perhaps something we will have to discuss. I didn't know that, to increase the number of views of a paper, you have to use a certain keywords. So for some reason, Silke asked me to put sociology somewhere in the title. So yes, it's a sociology, and it's about Japan, and it's about, I'm using the notions of warframes that I borrow from our colleague Honglun. So unfortunately, he won't be able to present his paper, and I did not. I thought he would present first his theoretical framework, so I did not prepare any slides to introduce that notion, but I will try to add a couple of explanation if you find it necessary. And mostly our paper is about the security threats that Japan has been facing before and after the Russian full-scale aggression of Ukraine in 2022. But now one of the major concern in Japan is about the tensions between Taiwan and China. So can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And we also see you on the slides.
Yeah, this is quite disturbing, actually. I don't know how to move myself. Okay. So Ukraine, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine was a shock for Japan. Our study focused on the response of Japan government before and after the Russian aggression. And similar to European nations, the conflict served as a wake-up call for Japanese society, a wake-up call of the threat of Russia, of course, because Russia is also a neighbor of Japan, and Japan and Russia had Soviet Union after World War II, and then Federation of Russia have had territorial conflicts in the north of Japan, around the Kuril Island for decades. So this has poisoned the relations between the two countries for a long time. However, for a while, the Prime Minister Abe Shinzo was very motivated to have a peace agreement, a peace deal, a peace treaty with Russia, and he was almost about to do that when Russia. It seems that Putin had other priority, including Ukraine. But if we look at the whole history of post-war Japan, when we use the notion of the expression of post-war Japan, actually it's equivalent of post-World War II Japan, and it's equivalent of contemporary Japan. So I will alternatively say contemporary Japan or post-war Japan. And when I say post-war Japan, things post-World War II, yeah? So for the last 80 years, relationship between Japan and China have been very complex, to say the least. But for most decades, it was relatively calm. And it started to become hectic again by the turn of the 2010, when Japan nationalized a few islets in the south of Japan near Taiwan. And that provoked the nationalism in China. And now the next big issue is the tensions over Taiwan. And because Okinawa, which used to be an independent kingdom for centuries, but was later colonized by Japan between the 17th and 19th century, Okinawa is very, very close to Taiwan. And so the debate is that most of the debate on the security issue regarding Japan focuses on Okinawa. This is the southern part of Japan. And because Okinawa is very close to Taiwan, the debate is about, is it possible for Japan to avoid a war with China, to avoid the conflicts with China if China attacks Taiwan? Beyond the political opportunities created by the shock of Russia's aggression in Ukraine, in this paper, we seek to clarify the extent to which Japan's ongoing securitization of China is reshaping the symbolic landscape of post-war Japan. So I will develop that later, but it's basically, that's why we use the notion of war frames. The method is a mix of quantitative and qualitative analysis. The quantitative analysis was conducted by Professor Sonoda, our colleague at the University of Tokyo, and myself and Professor Hirai. We conducted interviews and ethnographic observation in Okinawa, and in particular in the most southern part of Okinawa, which is a few hundred kilometers close to Taiwan. We tried to connect our paper with the sociology of war, and we are very indebted to Professor Sinisa Malisevic to help us to, to organize the whole monograph. And so it was not so easy to connect with the sociology of war, in the sense that if you look at the work of Malisevic, is mostly a sociology of war and violence. So I guess it fits very well with the ongoing situation in Ukraine, because you are already exposed to this massive and daily violence. And in Taiwan, it's mostly a hybrid war, like in Lithuania or Poland. I mean, so it's the gray zone war, mostly psychological war, information war, political war, diplomatic war. Recently, our lawmaker was put on a blacklist by China, meaning that if he travels abroad, he will be arrested. Nevertheless, he was able to go to Europe and attend. But it's basically that. So, nevertheless, Malisevic and also Michael Mann have pointed a couple of interesting things regarding the specific case of Japan that I found useful to use for our revised paper. And for example, Malisevic argues that there is a paradox. Japan has experienced much less interstate wars than most other large countries in the world, and probably mostly because of its remote geography. Japan is really the far east of the far east. So, and then the next after Japan, it's the Pacific Ocean, and then it's 1,000 kilometers before you reach Hawaii, and Vladivostok is also far away, and the closest is South Korea and Taiwan, but they're not so close to Tokyo. So this is a remote country, a peripheral country. So thanks to that, maybe Japan had less interstate wars. Paradoxically, Japan has been a very militarist country for centuries. And of course, the tradition of the samurai and the Bushido, and it comes from that. And that's why Japan was, when America and other Western countries came to provoke the country in the 19th century, Japan very quickly reacted much quicker than China to this aggression from the Western countries. And it became itself an imperialist country, conquering South Korea, Taiwan, well, first Okinawa, Korea, and Taiwan, and then China. So because of that, China has a strong resentment against Japan, and they are using it as an ideological tool. So if we look at post-war Japan, as Michael Mann argues, domestic politics matter here, but it's basically Japan has been a pacifist country. Even the right wing of the dominant party, the Liberal Democratic Party, has been mostly pacifist in the sense they gave priority to economy, and then defense came second. And so they tried to cope that way with Russian and Chinese aggressivity. But in recent years, and especially since Xi Jinping became president, China has become more and more aggressive. And this is considered a serious matter of concern for Japan. So the political elite now is has been pushing to increase the defense budget and to reinforce the military more and more, and to be also more involved on the diplomatic scene. There's an abundant literature on the Japan security issue, and especially Japan securitization of China. Or you can say that most, the great deal of the literature on Japan security issue focuses on the threat coming from China more than Russia or North Korea. Many of these studies use the securitization theory. So I already used the term securitization. It comes from the so-called Copenhagen School of Security Studies, a scholar like Buzan and Wenger, who introduced that notion in 1990, around mid-90s. And their followers, like in the Paris School of Security Studies, like Thierry Balzac. And basically, securitization is about, they use the notion, they borrow from John Austin, the philosopher of language, the notion of speech act, which shows that saying is doing. When you say something, it has consequences. So basically, they look at that. It helps to go beyond sometimes the tiresome debate between is the threat objective, or is it a question of subjective perception of risk? It goes beyond that to look at what the political leaders say, to call the bell for an alert, and if they succeed to transform that alert into a security issue. So also you can securitize something, or the criticism of this security speech can desecuritize this matter of threat. So in a nutshell, if you apply that to the case of Japan, Japan has had security issue for decades with Soviet Union and Russia, and also China and North Korea, but now it's mostly focused on China. I mentioned already the shock of the Ukraine war. For Japan, they like in Europe, there was little reaction after the annexion of Crimea in 2014. And as I mentioned already, Prime Minister Abe Shinzo kept trying to get a peace deal with Putin, but he did not. And that was quite a loss of faith for him. But the 2022, February 24, full-scale invasion against Kyiv and the whole Ukraine was a big shock for Japanese society, just like for European countries. it's in many sense, Japan is very close to Europe. It's a remote country. It's a peripheral country in a geographical point of view. But most Japanese think of themselves as almost, part of Western countries. It's kind of paradoxical. So it's not so surprising that they react the same way as Americans and Europeans did. But they have something specific. It's the fear of another nuclear disaster. So the threat on Chernobyl and Zaporizhia nuclear power plants, reminded them the terrible nuclear bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and most recently, 10 years ago, the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Also, Japanese were very shocked by the war crimes committed by Russia, for example, in Bucha and this kind of thing. So, so it's not so surprising that unfriendly feelings have been always very high regarding Russia, but it's by January 2023, it was as high as 95% of Japanese had unfriendly feelings against Russia. Basically, most Japanese do not buy the narratives that the aggression against Ukraine was provoked by NATO and this kind of thing. So 85% of Japanese think that it is Russia that is responsible for the war. Now, most recently, on November, beginning of this month, the new Prime Minister of Japan, Mrs. Takaichi, was questioned by lawmakers at the Japanese Diet. What will you do if China attack Taiwan? And she responded something that was surprising for many. She said that a contingency over Taiwan. Contingency, understand, it could be emergency, contingency, so does not really matter. It's if something happened, if something very serious happens between China and Taiwan, okay? So it's kind of, could be military blockade, could be a military aggression against Taiwan, whatever. This would be considered as an existential threat for Japan. So, in the international relation, diplomatic vocabulary, existential threat is a very big word. I mean, you can't go higher than that. So an existential threat against Japan would compel the government to ask the Diet the right to mobilize the self-defense forces, which is, the alternative name for Japanese military. That was a shock to many, but actually it's not so surprising. It breaks with the so-called strategic ambiguity that used to be practiced by the US and that Biden took distance with, but Trump is very much in strategic ambiguity regarding Taiwan. It means that he says to Xi Jinping, you better not do that. But he didn't say clearly what you will do if Xi Jinping attacks Taiwan. So departing from this posture, Takaichi clearly said, no, that will be an existential threat for Japan. So it's a big shock. So maybe you saw in the news that China reacted very strongly against that, and they have a couple of retaliatory measures, like stopping the Chinese tourists going to Japan and this kind of thing. But yeah, I think in Taiwan, most people really appreciate that statement. So
sorry, I have to interrupt. You have about 2 minutes.
Okay. So, well, I won't have time to develop the whole paper, but just the fear of Taiwan contingencies is a long issue. So the people we met in Okinawa insisted that they are very afraid that something will happen. And they believe that if something happened between China and Taiwan, actually it will involve the Senkaku Island, which is, you can see on the map, it's very close to Taiwan. So they feel the risk. However, they are not so keen to accept the development of Japanese military bases in their area because they fear that they will be the target of missile strikes, which is understandable given the history of Okinawa. Now you have this left-wing narrative, being a left-wing myself, that's most people we interviewed were left-wing, and it's part of what we are trying to do is the sociology of the critique of the security discourse from the government. We're trying to understand the nuances of the radical left-wing and those who feel sympathy for Taiwan but are not super enthusiastic about increasing the defense budget, for example. We try to get the nuances of gray between the criticism of the securitization discourse. This is the most irritating and most radical left-wing. I call it a pacifist and post-colonial posture. And they say Taiwan is just a pan for the US and the US can be trusted. And of course, we don't really trust the US, but we are compelled to do so. And then he say that it may sound rude, but it's the same as for stray dogs, cats, and pets. When they need to be euthanized, Tokyo cannot take responsibility for Taiwan. So here we have someone who used, that Taiwan used to be a colony of Japan, but doesn't want to take responsibility. Really irritating. Now we use the notion of warframes in that basically you have two warframes. One is the narrative that follow a right-wing narrative, the Great East Asian War, and the other narrative is from the Pacific War. It's the left-wing understanding that Japan lost the war because they shouldn't have done this imperial colonial invasion of other countries. So, but we argue that the current securitization of China is not a legacy of the Great East Asian War. Japan is not increasing its defense because they are nostalgic of the imperial Japan. No, it's because they fear China for legitimate reasons. But yet it's still interesting to understand why so many Japanese are still very much attached to Article 9 of the Constitution, which state that Japan should not start a war and should not have a military. It's so strong, this attachment, that for some political intellectuals, it's part of the identity, the very identity of contemporary Japan. Yet, this is this attachment to Article 9 is a little bit problematic because it has some security technical implications. Like, for example, they do not like the idea of having missiles that could strike China directly, which might be necessary in case of a war. And also this ambiguous attitude questions the willingness to fight of most Japanese. If you look at the World Values Survey, Japan always has a very low willingness to fight in case of a military aggression from another country, compared to China or Taiwan. It's most like Germany. However, I believe that in case of a military aggression from China, this could change very quickly. I don't have time to develop that, but we can talk later. So in conclusion, similar to post-war sociology, post-war Japan has for decades treated the threat of war as a marginal concern, even when East Asia was a hot spot during the Cold War. This has changed dramatically in recent years, driven by the momentum created by Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the securitization of China has succeeded, and Japanese public opinion generally supports the comprehensive package of defense policy reform. While critical minds, so mostly on the political left, acknowledge the necessity of responding more effectively to Beijing's aggression, support for increasing the defense budget remains conditional. Specifically, Japanese citizens are inclined to support increases only as long as they do not result in tax hikes or signify a fundamental shift in the socio-political system that has been in place since the end of World War II. Attachment to Article 9 remains very strong. So this ambivalent attitude reflects a broader hesitancy, such as a relative unwillingness to engage with the enemy in case of a conflict. Jukuyu, thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Paul, and to your co-authors as well, who contributed to the analysis. And we can open the floor to the questions and a short, I would say, discussion. So we have about 10 minutes for that. Any immediate questions that are that you colleagues might have with regard to this first presentation? Yeah, you can just raise your hand in the screen. You can use the palm in the Zoom, or you can type the question in the chat, then I will just read it out loud.
So,
Yes.
okay.
Olga.
I'm sorry, I cannot push on the button with the hand. Paul, first of all, thank you very much for your well thought out text and presentation. I have several questions, but maybe first of all, begin from the following one. You mentioned about the frame of Great East Asia War or the frame of Pacific War. Could you access how widespread these frames are among maybe elite, among maybe or presented in media discourses or in public discourse? To what extent are these frames touch the public sentiments?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Olga. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't prepare much explanation about that. Basically, so here I follow on Honglun's reading of his interpretation of the conflict of narratives on the history of wars conducted by Japan. So Japan has conducted many wars from the end of 19th century to the end of World War II. It started the war of the invasion against Taiwan and Korea, then Russia in 1904 or 5, and that was a big shock for Russia to be defeated by Japan, and so on and so forth. And then, but the most controversial part of Japanese on the historiography of Japanese war deals with what we started in the early 1930s. When Japan became a military regime, and they become an ally of Nazi Germany and the fascist Italy. And the first victims of that militarization were the Chinese people. I mean, the Imperial Army of Japan conducted a terrible war in mainland China. So there's a lot of controversy about, for example, the massacre in Nanking, how many thousands of people were killed by tortured and rape. And also another controversial issue is the how the Japanese Imperial Army uses women from Korea, Taiwan, China, and other countries in the military, how do you call, brothels, and they call comfort women. Most ultra right-wing Japanese do not acknowledge those historical facts. This is a very strong historical you call it revisionism or negationism. It's you know, in Europe it's about the Shoah and the Auschwitz and the massacre of Jewish people. In Japan, it's about that. This is the most taboo for the right wing, and Prime Minister Abe Shinzo was pretty much in that ideological frame during his first cabinet in 2007. Then he understood that it was not helpful to increase to reinforce the military. So he abandoned this ultra right-wing narrative. So basically you have this ultra right-wing narrative, like it's almost nostalgic of the imperial Japan. So we can call it this the great, because the way to call this war is the Great East Asian War. That's how the Japanese Imperial Army called that, the war of aggression against China and other Asian countries. And then the other war frame is what Honglun called the Pacific war frame. It's basically it's the Japanese left wing, but not only. It goes beyond the Japanese left wing. It's the acknowledgement that Japan lost the war and Japan should not have started any war at all. So it's basically a strong criticism of Japan militarism. And it's basically acknowledged that the Constitution of Japan, which was started in 1947 and was imposed by actually it's also Japanese legal scholars contributed to that, but it's basically it was drafted with the American. So it's a liberal constitution that ends the Article 9 pacifist article, and it has become such a as I tried to show with our paper, many people are strongly attached to this Article 9 because it has become a kind of name card for contemporary Japan. So the center left, they are worried about how China is more and more aggressive against other countries of the region, and starting with Taiwan, but they're reluctant to really take the most radical way to reinforce and strengthen the Japanese military. Okay, I stop here because I don't want to be too long.
Thank you. If I can, Tetiana.
Just 2 minutes left till the next presentation. So.
Okay, in continuation of my first question, the other one is your team's ethnographic observation in Okinawa show persistent resistance to militarization. Should we interpret Okinawa as a counter audience within Japan's securitization process, or does securitization in Japan unfold uniformly, or do you observe a significant generational or ideological divide?
Yes, certainly. You know, as you ask your question, and given where you are and what we are, I thought, could it be possible to compare Okinawa and Donbass? And in the case of Taiwan, it will be Kinmen Island. You know, it's Okinawa is definitely, I don't know about Donbass very much, but it's definitely a place which is very special within the Japanese archipelago. As I mentioned briefly, it used to be an independent kingdom, the Ryukyu kingdom, for centuries, until by the beginning of the 17th century, one daimyo, a feudal lord of southern Japan, of Satsuma, started to kind of not colonization, but kind of in French we call protectorate. Protectorate, you know, it's a domination, like and so and when Japan became a full imperial power by the end of 19th century, they completely annexed Okinawa and they transformed Okinawa, became another department, another prefecture, again. So Okinawa was integrated into Japan, but they kept their specific identity. And World War II, the end of World War II, before, you know, Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombing and the bombing over Tokyo, it is Okinawa who suffered the most the conflict with the U.S. Army. And basically, people from Okinawa were sacrificed by the Japanese Imperial Army. So you have this resentment, very strong, the legacy of that. And then after the war, the U.S., Okinawa was still separated from the rest of Japan for another 20 years. It was completely a U.S. military basis. And still most U.S. military bases are concentrated in Okinawa. 70% of U.S. military bases in Japan are located in Okinawa. However, now in the southern part of Okinawa, the Japanese self-defense forces are developing their own military bases because they are afraid the U.S. will, you know, actually, that's the most serious concern for Japan, is the disengagement of the US. And I think from what we know in, you know, just what happened recently and with Witkoff and, you know, those bastards of Trump administration, it's, you know, we are very concerned that the US completely disengaged from the region. So we have, it's hard to, you know, we have been used to rely on US military for decades, and suddenly they say, bye-bye, do it on your own. And yeah, it's all of a sudden. So it's, again, the situation of Japan is not so different from what you know in Ukraine and the rest of Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have one question in the chat, but I'm afraid we need to address it after the presentations are done.
No
I see the presentation from Bogdan, the question from Bogdan Muzika. Bogdan, if you don't mind, we'll keep the question until all the presentations are done and we come up with a broader discussion after all 5 papers. So, dear colleagues, I am suggesting to move on and to proceed with Diana's presentation, which fits very well as a continuation of the topic on securitization. So, in my opinion, so the paper titled National Security and the Framing of Eastern Europe in the Context of Russia's War Against Ukraine. Diana, the floor is yours, please. And again, I will make a hint when there will be 15 minutes over and around 2-3 minutes in addition if you need any.
So hello everyone one more time. So thank you very much for this opportunity to be here and to share our research. So I would like to thank Olga for organizing this this panel, and I would like to thank Paul who is working hard with our volume. And thank you, Tetiana, for being with us and sharing this session. So today I would like to speak about our research on framing of Eastern Europe in the context of Russia's war against Ukraine, and the implications for this framing for national security in the region. Speaking about frames, there are two important questions which we were raising in our research. The first one is causes of framing of Europe along the lines of post-World War II Cold War frontiers, and the second question is about consequences of this framing. And we are concentrating on both. And we speak about two frames, mostly two frames of Eastern Europe, the Western one and the Russian one, and we concentrate more on the Russian frame, since it has tremendous consequences for the security situation in Europe. So why I'm showing this this map, I think it's very important to see that that we have Europe, which was during by many historical events divided in certain ways, and what we have now is that after the end of the Cold World War and the disappearance of the Berlin Wall, we have tremendous changes in Europe, and these lines that were as we see here, the Eastern European boundary, it has moved. So now we have constantly different actual divisions in Europe. So we have Finland and Sweden in NATO. We have Baltic states in NATO. We have all Central Europe in NATO. We have the European Union borders, we have Schengen borders, and we have Eurozone borders. And this is a tremendous change. However, this actual change does not necessarily is in the minds of the people elsewhere. I mean, to the west and to the east or north or south of this region. And it's these actual borders actually do not matter much for Russian state, because it claims that all this part, which used to be in their influence after the Second World War, still is in the influence nowadays, even if actual situation is quite different. So if to speak about our paper and our research, what we do, we think that that the definition of what is what, the definition of a situation and the definition of this Eastern Europe matters a lot. And it has already and could have further consequences for national security in this region. So let me remind just shortly the classical work of American scholars, two scholars, Thomas theorem, which was developed it's about 100 years ago. So if men define situations as real, they are real in their consequences. What does it mean? That reality does not exist uniformly or independently of the individuals who observe and interpret them, and that interpretation of a situation influences the resulting action. So we apply this theorem in addition to several theories, security theories, and objective and subjective security to the to the explanation of the recent situation in the area known as Eastern Europe. And we think that the very notion of Eastern Europe is quite dangerous, because using this notion, we legitimize the ambitions of the Russian state, the colonial ambitions, and this is what could be used very critically, and we should understand that that words matter. And as Paul said, that saying is doing. This is important. Like we should be very aware that words, notions, and perceptions they matter a lot. What about framing and the influence of this framing for the security? So we think and we base our ideas on Butler's definition that frames does not simply exhibit the reality, but actively participates in a strategy of the containment. So central to our argument is ideas that frames are produced and reproduced by power. And as it is in the case of Russia, they are used to legitimize the actions of war, as it was done in the case of its war against Ukraine, saying that Ukraine does not exist, or it has no state, or it's like always belonged to Russia, and etc. But frames are deeply rooted in history and collective memory. But frames are caused by events, and they lead to new events. I think this is central in our study. Because this frame of Eastern Europe, of course, this is the result of the Cold War situation after the Second World War. And as I said, it leads to new events, but this framing helps the aggressor to legitimize its ambitions and its war. And more importantly, these frames could work as the legitimation in the minds of the people worldwide, that like this frame, if it is sold properly to the minds of the people of the world, it could help the aggressor to legitimize its actions. And actually, this is a very dangerous thing, and this is the act of informational war which is going on now, and this is a part of the hybrid war which we experience recently. So as I said, frames, they work as tools of justification of geopolitical interest of war, and they are a very strong tool of war. The war Russia has against Ukraine, and the hybrid war it has against some other nations as well. So mental mapping and framing unfortunately resist the historical changes. And this is one more thing we should bear in mind. So how to apply this approach of framing to the analysis of Eastern Europe? So let me stress again that the Eastern European frame serves as an important example of event-led socially constructed paradigms that remain an important instrument in mapping and perceiving a part of Europe. And in addition, this is a powerful tool of conventional war as well as a hybrid informational war. So the frame of Eastern Europe, or frames of Eastern Europe, as we call them in our paper, divides Europe along the colonial lines. The frame is remnant of the post-World War II power relations, and it positions a part of Europe as a periphery, which is quite quite dangerous. And I think this is so strongly embedded in the minds of the people, not only in the West, but I think elsewhere, that it does not acknowledge the changes that happened already in this part of the world, not to speak about the economic developments, for instance, in the Baltics and the movement of the borders of NATO, Eurozone, Schengen, and so on. So the frames of Eastern Europe, they express the viewpoint of the external and superior observer. So we employ in our paper the decolonial perspective, and we speak not only about Western colonialism, which is present in the colonial sociology, but unfortunately, what is not present, this is the analysis of Russian colonialism, and it is quite strong. And even sometimes even stronger than the Western one. As I said previously, we conclude that the frame of Eastern Europe legitimizes the imperial interests of Russia. This frame continues to serve as a tool for interpretation of reality and legitimation of interest. And Russia's war against Ukraine is in part an event derived from Russia's framing of Eastern Europe. And I'm afraid that nowadays what we have in these so-called negotiation processes where United States are involved. So this framing actually plays quite an important role. The frame embeds other closely related meta frames such as the Russian world, and you know that according to the ideology of Russia and the ideology of Putin, Russian borders has no ends, so Russia hasn't got clear borders. So, and this is the Russian world. The pan-Slavism, that the ideas about the recreation of creation of new forms of states to unite all the Slavic nations. I don't know how they incorporate into this the Baltic nations, because these are not Slavic, and the close neighborhood. This is an easy incorporation of the Baltic states. Close neighborhood for Russia's imperial ideology means that everything which used to be part of Russian Empire or the Soviet Union, it's still one unity, which in one way or another should be recreated to restore the historical the historical truth as it is understood by Russia. And these ideas are quite dangerous. Unfortunately, these ideas are very well transformed by the informational war tools of Russia via I don't know, manipulation of people's minds, via all informational, I don't know, Facebooks and everything else. So everything is pushed into the minds via these manipulative mechanisms. And Russia is quite successful, I would say, in doing that, because this is what they are doing. They are putting a lot of money in that. And for example, lately, we had some news that, for example, in Lithuania, we have 1 million bots operating and transmitting these ideas of Russia. Like, could you imagine that the numbers? Like, we have 3 million people living in Lithuania, and we have 500,000 bots working to change the minds of the people. So this is like amazing stuff, like amazing tool, which is used as a weapon of war. So one of the ideas what we are promoting in our paper is that sociology of war needs to broaden its scope, and it needs to incorporate all these hybrid forms of war, and not only the conventional war in the form of real military actions and real military violence, but all what is done behind, like all the hybrid attacks, for example. Right now, what we're experiencing, this is a new kind of hybrid war. So in a form of meteorological balloons, which come from Belarus. They fly towards the airport of Vilnius, and Vilnius airport was shot. Last time it was yesterday. So it's like a constant thing which is going on right now. So these hybrid forms of war, you never know what new forms of war appears, and if the airport and it's not only about Vilnius airport. We have 4 airports, so almost all of them are closed due to this danger of these meteorological balloons. So
sorry for interrupting. 2 minutes.
Yes.
Additionally to.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to conclude. So what I'm saying is that the paradigms of sociology of war should go in line with the modern developments of war, and should necessarily include these hybrid forms of war, as well as the informational war, which is going on not only in Europe, but it goes everywhere. Okay, so the concept of Eastern Europe, we think, constitutes a historically constructed category, socially constructed category that continues to shape contemporary geopolitical imaginations and policy responses. We think that, unfortunately, both Western and, of course, Russian interpretation of Eastern Europe are rooted in Cold War binaries, shaped by past conflicts and power rivalries that remain highly influential today. That Russia's framing serves as a legitimation tool of its imperial ambitions and justifies military aggression, the conventional war, through ideologies such as the Russian world, and that Western framings risk reinforcing outdated geopolitical divisions that may contribute to the emergence of new security challenges. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Diana. And we can have around 10 minutes for questions from the audience. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Diana. So you this time you did not mention about the refugees, or you do in your paper, right?
Yes, sure, we do, but for the purpose, since we have just 10 or 15 minutes, so I skipped that. But yes, in our paper, we have some a part devoted to another frame. This is the solidarity frame with Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees, and we're saying that this new frame, this solidarity frame, is kind of important, since it destroys these clear boundaries of Eastern Europe, because it has quite another shape. And regarding the Lithuania stance and the Baltics, like the Latvian and Estonians, we like have a very clear this solidarity with Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees. And since some of you have already been to the conferences organized by the Lithuanian Sociological Association, so I think you had a chance to witness that firsthand.
Yes, my question is, I need to read your revised version, but it's because this idea of using the notion of frame and to apply that to the solidarity of Lithuanian society, and you could also say so for Polish and other European countries, using the notion of frame to describe the solidarity movement, all this. I'm not sure frame. I understand why you use it, because it is my fault. Actually, I push you to do so, and now I'm finding myself a little bit hesitant. I'm not sure if it's a problem of language. Can we call of a solidarity frame? To what extent the solidarity frame is a response to a war frame? I think solidarity within different frames of war, you have different options. Among those options, you have one possible answer is solidarity. Another is indifference. Another is, in the case of Poland, Kaya talk about fatigue, solidarity fatigue, because, you heard that Polish society has, they think they have too much refugees, they have given too much. I mean, the right-wing parties, the PIS, and are pushing for that. So I'm curious. In the case of Lithuania, do you have a strong consensus for continuous solidarity for Ukrainian refugees, or have you seen also some signs of solidarity fatigue, as Kaya used that expression?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Of course, we will discuss what to do in our article with this part, the other part which I haven't spoken today about. But regarding your question, in comparison to Poland, we have a different situation in Poland. They have 2 million Ukrainian refugees. It's a lot, it's a tremendous amount. While we have only 40 to 50,000 people. Mostly, they are concentrated in big cities, so it's not these big numbers. But of course, you're right. The fatigue is here, and not only the fatigue, because we need to somehow. This is like a long time they are here, and of course, most probably the majority of them do not intend to move elsewhere. So in order to live here comfortably for them and for us, they need to learn language. So far, there were no obligation to learn the language. And let me remind you that in the Polish case, linguistically, Ukrainian and Polish, they are very close. In our case, this is a totally different linguistic group. It's not Slavic. So in order to learn it, you should go, you should put efforts, you should go and learn it in language schools. And now we have a new, quite a big change, starting from the next year, it will be obligatory if you want to have a job, you need to speak the language. And since a lot of people work in shops, or I don't know, in hairdressers and whatever, so they should at least speak some languages, because as we witness it now, that this is the customer who should adopt and somehow understands what a person speaks in the shop. Of course, they have a sign that sorry, they do not speak the language, but this is, this is not about the fatigue. This is, I think, about this the development of the integrational processes. So I think this, I'm not sure how it will work next year when it will be obligatory. But so far, what the problem we have, this is the problem with integrating the Slavic people into other linguistic environment, and this is a huge issue.
Thank you, Diana. Archu, there is an interesting question to you in the chat. I don't know if...
and I have to now take over
okay, so we'll keep that
moderating.
for the... Okay.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I appreciate your proactive role in this.
Well, because
so,
I had the same question, that's why.
But I also see that Mikolaj has the question, the raised hand. So please give your question, ask your question, Mikolaj, and then I will read out loud the question from the chat, and we will ask Diana to answer both.
Yes, thank you. Actually, in my case, it's more a reaction and clarification, and actually 2 or 3 ideas to follow on what Paul and Diana were talking about. Actually, this question of fatigue and the category, the fatigue category, it's a very interesting term and idea, and I think it deserves further elaboration, both theoretically and empirically. But I would actually suggest to broaden the scope. And of course, when we compare Lithuania to Poland, it might seem similar, even though there are differences between the countries in the number of refugees, but also in the absolute numbers of the population. So this 40-50% in Lithuania, still it's quite a number, taking into account the total population of Lithuania, and huge outflux, so to phrase it, of Lithuanians to Western Europe, right? I mean, the migration from Lithuania to other countries. But I would actually suggest to go further with the comparison. When we think about Lebanon and the Palestinians in Lebanon who are refugees for 40, 60 years, then, I mean, in Lebanon, we can talk about the fatigue. In Poland or Lithuania, if you compare 3-4 years to 60 years, come on, I mean, we shouldn't be so fatigued so far and for the next couple of decades, actually. That's one thing. The second thing, that's very interesting comparison between Poland and Ukraine, Poland and Lithuania, because the linguistic question is very, I mean, I haven't thought about it actually, but now I see the point, and Diana is very right to actually emphasize this. However, what I see in at least bigger cities here in Poland is that actually it's not such a problem because of the other migrants who are actually further culturally. That's the question of not only Warsaw, but also Kraków, Wrocław, Gdańsk. So in many places, actually, English is the first language because all the other people working in the services, they are much farther linguistically than Ukrainians. So actually, lingua franca, English is becoming lingua franca, not Polish. It's not like widespread, and in smaller cities, of course, and the towns, it's not like that. But in several places, in the center of Kraków, Wrocław, or Warsaw, this is how it is. And again, that's very interesting because I don't know about the migration to Vilnius, and generally speaking, Kaunas and the rest of Lithuania. But in our case, the higher number of migrants and refugees are the Ukrainians, but other groups are also quite numerous. And the thing is that the Ukrainians are actually the closest in terms of language. So for them, Polish is actually the easiest. But for people from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Uzbeks, who are like, there are numbers of Uzbeks here in Warsaw right now, and most of them, they speak Russian, so there is a link, but Russian is farther from Polish than Ukrainian. Ukrainian is much closer and much easier for Ukrainians to understand Polish than for the Uzbeks who speak Russian as a second language. Sorry, not very systematic thoughts, but you actually made me think about the situation, and I have no doubt that this is an important part of your project, should be an important part of your project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, actually, I agree with everything you've said. Just to mention a few things that yes, we experience a very big immigration from other countries. And Lithuania, now I ever heard that from the migrants, they're saying that Lithuania is the new Sweden. Like it's an attractive destination, and actually we have, as Mikolaj said, we have everything. Like it's and English, yes. If you go, like when I live in Vilnius, when you go out, like I don't know, every day you could use English, and yes, because there are a lot of people. Like we have, in addition to that, we have about 40,000 Belarusians who migrated from Belarus, and this is white collar people, white collar workers. I mean, this is the IT sector, this is business and so on. So we rent all this, like the most expensive parts in the old town, the flats and so on. So in addition to this, we have this issue. So you know that we have the Belarusian opposition office in Vilnius. We have the Russian opposition here. We have all kind of oppositional Russian and Belarusian media in Vilnius and in Riga as well. So this is, quite a big thing. But for Vilnius, Vilnius was always multicultural. It was like Polish, Jewish, German, and it was kind of always like that. But still, there should be a language which we all understand, and the only language which is a state language is Lithuanian. So in order to live here comfortably, still, you need that. You could communicate in English, like for everyday purposes, but to do the paperwork in the state institutes, you need to know the language. And this is the issue, and I agree completely that there is a big difference when we speak about migrants from Ukraine, or in our case from Belarus as well, bearing in mind the linguistic differences, and people from India. Indians actually are the most, in migration studies, they are viewed as the ones who integrate very easily. They do not cause big issues. So this is not, and then they speak English as well. So this is, yes. But in addition to all what I've said about with the hybrid threats, a big issue for the state is this integration of new inhabitants of the country, because this should be done in order to avoid, I don't know, this polarization or formation of ghettos and so on. So this is what could be done now to prevent the dangers of possible formation of ghettos.
Thank you, Diana. Just a third question from the chat. I think it fits very well what we've been discussing so far with regard to the language differences, and probably it also leads a bit to the answer to this question. So the question from Bogdan Muzika, given the theoretical approach focused on the perception of the risks and in fact the construction of reality through its perception, how would you evaluate Russia's current information influence on Lithuanian people? Is it possible to consider Russia's information influence to have a significant impact on the perception of security risks among Lithuanians? Or is Lithuania able to maintain its information sovereignty successfully?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's different. It's very different because people, the younger people who are younger than 40, they do not speak Russian to the level that we do not understand the sentence. So there is no way to influence these people by the transmission of information in Russian. So what Russia does, it uses bots, and they speak other languages like Lithuanian or English or whatever. So this is, yes, but how to measure the influence? You know, the influence definitely is there, but I think the resilience is very, very strong as well. Like what the state did, I mean, the official Russian TV is forbidden, like in radio, and it's not transmitted. It's not easy to get that. You need to have some special equipment to just to switch on your TV, like the Russian TV. There are some people who are still in this information, under the influence of this information, but I think these are the people who live close to the Belarusian border, and they are of non-Lithuanian descent, the ethnic minorities. And actually, among them is Polish minority. Michal, sorry to say that, but a large amount of Polish ethnic minority. They are still under the influence of Russia's informational influence, because again of the linguistic things. I know that in Poland, I lived in Poland and I studied in Poland for 5 years. I know the attitudes of Polish people. They think that the Polish minority in Lithuania, they speak the same Polish as people in Poland, but this is not the case, because it's a dialect. And we learned Polish like in school and so on. And unfortunately, due to the Sovietization and the things we had during the Soviet Union, so people are still eager to live in this Russian informational sphere, but these are just 5% of the population, and most probably the people who are within this influence is much less. So this is another challenge for the Lithuanian state, how to take and to push these people from this influence towards our side. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. And okay, Olga, the final question, and let's move maybe to the next paper after your question. And but you are muted. We don't hear you. You have to unmute yourself, Olga. We don't hear you.
Thank you. I try to be very shortly, and my question is in continuation of the question by Bogdan, but in theoretical aspect. I see that your presentation, you rely on an idea by Butler's concerning the production of the frames by the power elite, by the power. Essentially, it is a continuation of Gramsci's idea about the production of ideology from the elite and then fragmented and absorbed by the masses. I see this process as more complex, and I propose to take into account the vision of the other side of this very complex process of production of functioning of the frames. I mean, the work by Alexander, also about Butler, but in other reading. So I mean that. I consider, I'm sorry, I consider that the frames are not only produced by elite, but also is a production by people's everyday experience. So we can call these like primary frames from speakers from the everyday life, and the secondary frames. The institutional interpretation, the institutional discourse which created from above, at above, and then push to the public discourse. So at the aftermath, we receive the strong action between the primary and secondary frames, frames produced by the everyday life, by people, and the frames produced by the power or institutions. So, from this point of view, can you assess the extent to which the Lithuanian public support or opposes the Eastern Europe frame? Does this frame influence people's attitude? So these are bottom side of the frame working, frame functioning, frame production.
Yeah, I understand what you say, Olga, but unfortunately, I don't agree because, we live, like in the Baltics, we live under the frames created by power. We live under the, like Schengen. Like this is what the reality. I mean, it was created not by the people, but by the state, and this border clearly shows how people perceive. If you could buy a ticket like for 20 euro to go for a weekend like to Rome or then Annapolis, but you will not buy a ticket to go to Moscow, I'm sorry, because you need visa and nobody goes to Russia. The Schengen border is here in the map, and it was created, and we live according to that. So everything is like it's in one. It goes in one. There is no other way of life, because this is how the life go on, like with primary frames and secondary frames, as you mentioned. Of course, I understand the logic of that, but this is actually one frame, because this is the only frame where you actually live in, like yeah, the closest frame actually for the Baltics, this is the Nordic Baltic frame. This is the Scandinavia plus the Baltic, because culturally this is one entity. And it's clear for us, but it's not clear for the outsiders, because not everybody, first of all, not always everyone should know everything. And this is the external view, but from the internal view, this is the area where we live. Like this is historically, culturally, religiously, like one thing. But yes, I will try to address this in the paper. Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, I would be actually wondering.
Include the frames of solidarity, etc. Solidarity both on the basis of everyday communication with forced migrant people, for example, and this experience impact on the vision of perception of the situation. So thank you.
Yeah, I would be actually wondering in this combination of the frames of the Baltic states and the Eastern European states, so how it's whether it is complementary, contradictory, or anyhow adding to the whole framing. And the other issue is this question that Bogdan raised in the chat with regard to the resistance to information influence from Russia and this language issue. So maybe not with the language, but with the narrative. So it could be not in Russian language, but it could be the Russia's narrative that is transmitted, and whether it's possible to trace it. But that's again not something to answer right now. It's just for maybe further discussion if we'll have time in the end. And I would suggest to move further to our third presentation. And actually we'll have two following presentations about, again, we're going east again, far east. And the third presentation is will be delivered by Joshua, and it's about the influence and the war support in China in relation to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the annexation project of Taiwan. And please, the floor is yours. So you can share the slides and we can check if it's just the tab. Yeah, we see the slides. And please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so today I will be presenting the findings of our team. Like we do some online survey in China and to ask about Chinese public's opinion on their attitude towards the Russo-Ukrainian war and the potential conflicts between Taiwan and China. So basically, it's an empirical research project. So we will deliver on our team behalf to you to show you our findings. So let's begin. So basically, our questions is focusing on how do Chinese people really perceive war under the current totalitarian regime? So, and how do Chinese people evaluate Russia's invasion against Ukraine, and how Chinese people really see about the Chinese encroachment and its military threat to Taiwan, and what kind of factors that really shape Chinese people's opinion on both of these issues. So to analyze this issue, so I apply the concept of warframes. This concept is actually developed by Professor Wang Honglun, but he's not here right now. So I would surely talk about the frameworks. So the warframes can be divided into two parts. The first part is the primary frameworks. So the primary frameworks basically refers to the immediate encounters and experience that an actors have in specific events like wars or conflicts. So the experience are then interpreted by these people based on their culture or shared values. And the interpretation then shape people's worldview, and such worldview will gradually develop into a kind of ideology. So basically, it's how the primary frameworks works. And so this reinterpretation and the reframing of the wartime experience can later develop into a secondary frameworks. So through the secondary frameworks, people can generate their narratives about the war experience and and as well as their performance that embody this interpreting experience. And in other words, so secondary frameworks are basically concerned on how war itself is interpreted and justified or remembered, and how people should act around the specific interpretation of war. So additionally, people basically apply the secondary framework to anticipate or make sense of the corresponding action and against the war, and may occur, and they just take the secondary framework to anticipate the war that might happen in future. So this is how the frameworks really shape people, and how the people adapting to that framework can have a subsequent consequence on the social structure and history events. Yeah, that's basically all my framework of analysis. Yeah, so based on the war frames, the concept. So now we can take a glance on how China built the war frames for its people. So since the founding of the PRC, so as a member of the Communist Bloc, it has constructed a revolutionary narratives. It's called Century of Humiliation, and they imposed the war frames among the Chinese people. So the war frames basically it blames the Chinese past underdevelopment in the late 19th century to the early 20th century as a result of Western imperial invasion, and also in the framework, they call the Communist Party of China as the savior to bring China out of the long-term misery. So it's a 100-year misery. So in these narratives, so this narrative further evolved into an Western, like they basically have a fundamental anti-Western sentiment in a sense, and it was gradually strengthened as the China's relationship with the Western democracy really deteriorated in recent years. So the framework is used to deflect the public dissatisfaction with economic stagnation by shifting the blame onto foreign sanctions and implying that the force is somehow military force is somehow a legitimate means to deal with the confrontation with other countries like Japan or Taiwan. So in other words, the anti-Western war frames is crucial to current governance of China's party states as it faces stagnation situation in domestic and foreign affairs. So the CCP also apply many means to implement such narratives among the public. Like they literally make the century of humiliation framework as the doctrine in their history textbook, and like they sponsor the filming of like historical movie and series based on like revolutionary or Sino-Japanese war stories. And they also promote tourism in revolutionary or real war-related sites. So that's how the Chinese government really impose the war frames among its public. So the following question is will be so as we already know, they employ a lot of means to implement such war frames. So how effective it is. So how does the framework shape people's perception of the current international conflicts? And what factors could weaken or strengthen the war frames of the Chinese government? So basically, our research data is drawn from online netizens, and it is conducted during the late 2024 to the early 2025. So we got like almost 2,600 valid cases in total. And by the way, we always when we conduct our analysis, we weight our total sample based on the gender and age distribution based on the China census. Yes. So that's how we get our data. And so in our dependent variables, basically we ask their attitude towards the Russians' invasion towards Ukraine and Chinese military action against Taiwan. So the questions looks like this. The first one is, do you support Russia using military force to attack Ukraine? And the second one is, considering the current global situation and cross-strait relations, do you support reunifying Taiwan by force? So we incorporated different variables like income, education level, and where you work. You work in a private sector or working for governments, and your household registration is 户口 in China, and it's basically tied to your personal welfare situation, and of course the party membership, whether you are part CCP member or not, and the city where you live. Yeah, it shows how where the people live in a more developed area or rural area. So aside from these demographic variables, we also incorporate their subjective perception on different issues, like their perception on current China's economic situation and their perception on China's social situation and their own expectation of their own living situation in next year, and their perception on how they feel Taiwanese people. Do they think Taiwanese people are welcoming the unification or they go against the unification? So this is our independent variables, and we all incorporate it into our models. And so later so the first step is that we just show how many people in our total sample they supports Russia's aggression and China's aggression. So as we can see on the screen, there are like 52% of Chinese people in our sample. They support Russians using military force against Ukraine. And there are even more people, like it's 61% people say that they support attacking reunifying Taiwan by force. So this is basically how we cross-tabulate respondents' attitude towards these questions. So basically with various demographic variables and conducted a chi-square test. So to test whether the difference is statistically significant. So our findings reveal that certain groups have a strong inclination towards their militarism. So they basically endorse using of military force. So people who age 35 or above, and male, and people with education levels with only junior high schools or below, these people tend to support Russia's aggression and forced annexation over Taiwan. So additionally, people who live in the cities that they register their household are more likely to support the use of force to reunify Taiwan. And regarding the party membership, Chinese Communist Party members shows a significant higher level of support of forceful unification compared to non-party members. So in terms of their geographical locations, people living in third-tier city and fourth-tier city are more likely to support forced attack on Taiwan. So in contrast, people living in most developed major cities are less likely to support the use of force against Taiwan. So regarding their subjective attitudes, we also found that people who subjectively believe that China's economic condition is doing good, doing well, and China society is fair, and their own living condition is improving in next year, and they tend to support the use of military aggression against Taiwan, and also support the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So conversely, those who have a much more pessimistic view on this issue are less likely to support using of military force. So now we incorporate all the variables into the largest regression model, so we can find a similar conclusion that people with lower education levels and male are likely to support the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And being a Communist Party member increased likelihood of supporting attacking Taiwan. And regarding their job, being a business owner reduced their likelihood of supporting military aggression against Taiwan. And their household registration, if you register in local urban residence or you are a migrant worker, that increase your likelihood of supporting military aggression against Taiwan. And regarding the place of your residence, living in a third or fourth tier cities increase the likelihood of supporting military aggression against Taiwan. So regarding the subjective attitudes, if one people believe that living situation will be worse in the next year and the China's economic situation is poor right now, they might refrain from supporting reunification of Taiwan. But however, if someone believes that China's economy is doing good, so it basically increased the likelihood of supporting Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So furthermore, we examine the relationship between people's perception of how many Taiwanese support unification and support for both Russian-Ukrainian war and use of force against Taiwan. So the results we can see on the screen, those who believe there are higher proportion of Taiwanese people supporting unification are more inclined to support the military unification of Taiwan. Additionally, there's a strong positive correlation between support of both Russia's aggression against Ukraine and China's attack on Taiwan. So these indicate that those who support one war tend to support the other. So basically, if you support Russians attacking Ukraine, basically you are much more likely to support that you're going to support China's attack on Taiwan. So that's the basic logic we find among the Chinese people. So now we further categorize all our respondents based on their preference for the two questions. So now we identify 4 types of respondents. So those who support both Russia's aggression and China's aggression against Taiwan. They are regarded as the hardline nationalists we marked it in red on the screen. So those who support neither, we categorize them as the moderate realists. So basically they don't support either war. They don't support attack on Ukraine. They don't support China's attack on Taiwan both. So in our data sets, there are basically 42% of hardline nationalists. So basically 42% in our sample says that they support both wars against Taiwan and Ukraine. So, and there are only like 29% of people say they don't support both wars. So next we conduct a logic regression as well to examine which factor influence the likelihood of individuals being a hardline nationalist or moderate realist. So the findings similar to our previous findings. So people who age 35 to 55, and if you are male and if you have only like middle school education or below, you're probably gonna be the hardline nationalist. And conversely, these groups are less likely to be the moderate people. So furthermore, in terms of their residential location, so basically living in rural area are more likely to be hardline nationalists. And if you are living in a 3rd or 4th tier cities, are less likely to be moderate realists. So regarding your subjective attitudes, we found that those who believe that their living condition will worsen next year are less likely to be hardline nationalists, but more likely to be moderates. And those who believe China's economy situation is poor are less likely to be hardline nationalists and more likely to be moderates. Conversely, those who believe China's economy is strong are more likely to be hardline people and less likely to be moderates. Finally, those who believe that high proportion of Taiwanese support unification are less likely to be moderates. So this is to say that when Chinese people believe that the unification is well welcomed in Taiwan, they tend to back government's aggression against Taiwan. So this is our preliminary conclusions that from our study, we find that the Chinese government's frameworks on war has been effective in shaping public opinion. The anti-Western war frames has led many people to adopt a militarist attitudes, supporting both Russia's aggression and their own aggression against Taiwan. And these militaristic tendencies are more prevalent among groups with limited access to alternative information sources, such as those people who have lower educations, and if you are living in the inland locked cities, so you tend to be more inclined to the official discourse. So this suggests that this social position makes them more likely to adopt war frames implemented by the Chinese government. So nevertheless, the effectiveness of the state-crafted war frames is also limited by other factors, like when individuals perceive that war is detrimental to their own well-being, they will tend to refrain their supports from any kind of wars. So conversely, those who are optimistic about their personal situation and China's economy are more likely to be aggressors. So that's our findings about the Chinese people's attitude towards both geopolitical conflicts, and I hope you can share your thoughts with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joshua. And we can open the floor for the questions and the discussion of what you shared with us. Also on behalf of your co-author. So yeah, so any questions, any comments or inquiries? Yeah, we'll start with Olga. Yeah, we hear you.
Thank you very much, Joshua, for your presentation and your excellent work, excellent article. I like very much the very strong conceptual framework. I like very much the methodological clearness you applied to the study and the very grounded conclusion. My question maybe is short. So I would like to know more. When China's respondents endorse the use of force to unify Taiwan, what is the primary driver? National identity, authoritarian socialization, or perceived external threat from the West. We realize that the economic factors are at the background, sure, but concerning the sense, concerning the interpretation or legitimation of the motivation of their support of this possible invasion. Could you do you have any answer? Do you have any data concerning it? Primary driver.
You mean the primary driver of the Chinese people's aggression attitudes?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. In my research, basically, it's basically in our framework of analysis. Basically, we thought it was driven by, you can say it's a kind of, it's like I previously say, it's kind of framework that fabricated by the governments, by the Chinese party states. They just fabricate a kind of information environment, and they just tend to like make people believe that that's the way we should do. So basically, that's why I implemented the warframes concept in the previous slides, because I think that's how Chinese people, not only the people really encounter the war, they can generate a perception. So the governments, the states can also involve the process. So as I don't have the time to really talk about how the Chinese government really fabricates the warframes among Chinese people in different sphere, like in mass media, in education, and like red tourism. They do have kind of tourism. They take you to the revolutionary sites, to the war-related sites, and tell you, oh, that's how we suffer from the invasion. So we should build a strong army or something. So that's the constant construction about their war perception on Chinese people. And I think that's the main driving force of how Chinese people become more aggressive towards both Taiwan and they tend to support Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Yeah.
Thank you. And other question, if I
Yes.
may. Yeah, it's concerning the methodology of first of all, concerning a possible limitation of the data, reliability of the data. data reliability restriction, possible restriction or limitation on respondent accessibility, respondent willingness to answer question, and the possible influence on the respondents from the side of the power ideology. So, what do you say, describe, explain concerning the possible limitation of the data which you use in your work?
Oh, you mean the data?
Accessibility, reliability,
Okay.
openness to by respondents to interviewer.
Yeah. I think the reliability of our data it's trustworthy because actually so that's a kind of like we cooperate with one of the company that the professor says we cannot disclose which company it is because they have the techniques. So we really concerned about if we disclose that company, then they're going to be shut down from their access towards the Chinese netizens. So sorry, I cannot tell you which company it is, but they have the so basically, as I know, they have the techniques to like randomly assign websites. Like our surveys is written in a website, and then they just randomly assign the website into the Chinese internet users, and they might randomly click into it, and they can start answer. So that's by far I know what I know about how the survey is doing. And the other question is about, so I think the other question is whether people really answer sensitive question in authoritarian country. Is that your point? Yeah. So basically, yes. I think in these two, so we actually conduct in other surveys. So basically in our research, these two questions are not the most sensitive one. Yeah, I think asking people whether they supports aggression against Taiwan and supports Russian aggression against Ukraine. Yes, it is not that sensible that people might refrain to tell their true thoughts. So I think it's still okay to just use direct question to ask them these topics. But the question, but actually we have do something else more sensitive about how do you feel with Xi Jinping, or how do you feel with the Communist Party itself? This kind of question is really sensitive. So basically we apply other methods like it's the statistical techniques called like conjoint analysis and this experience. So basically you bypass the people, so people don't really know whether they are asked about their support rates on Xi Jinping or CCP, but we use that tool to compare to randomly group people and to show what the difference in these two group of people is their real support rate of like Xi Jinping or CCP. So that's how we conduct a sensitive question in China. I think, yeah, but regarding your question, I think maybe we can try employing such methods on both these issues, like their attitude towards war. Yeah, because there might be some. I have to admit that there might be some socially biased consequence when you are living in a consequence when you are living in environments that everyone looks like a warmonger. You're gonna be like more likely to demonstrate like, oh, you are okay with going to war. Yeah, but maybe next time we can employ the statistical technique to this question. Maybe we can tell whether their support on war is real or just like you are pressured by your peers, so you are forced to show your support against Taiwan and against Ukraine. Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So thank you, Professor Kutsenko.
Thank you very much. And data fieldwork is conducted by a Chinese pollster company or by Taiwanian survey pollster.
You mean the company?
Oh, who conduct this fieldwork?
I think Joshua mentioned that he cannot disclose the company name because otherwise the company might face the let's say
it's not in Taiwan, it's not in China.
Yeah.
It's in North America. That's the most I can tell you.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, I also think that the limitation might be addressed as far as it's the online survey. So mentioning that people who do not have internet access were not included in the survey is quite an essential when you sharing, when you are commenting, when you're interpreting the quantitative data from the online survey. So from a very quick search, let's say, we can see that the internet penetration is just about 80% in China. So the survey results are not covering this population that has no internet access. So maybe this short note on this could be also added. I'm not sure if it's already added. If it is, then excuse me for this note. But if it's not, then maybe you can just include this as a description in the data limitation, and also mentioning who is that population who has no internet access, because so far in your data, from what we saw, you are covering rural and urban population, you are covering all age groups, so there is no considerable bias in terms of the sampling by the age group, or like elderly or rural residents. But anyways, this is something that I believe should be mentioned in the data limitation, data collection limitation.
Yes.
Dear colleagues, does anyone have a question or a comment to the paper presented? Or we can also add the comments if you come up with any in the end of our panel. And shall we move then to the next paper? And the next paper, the fourth paper of our session, will be delivered by Josh Wenger, also presenting on behalf of co-authors, and is titled "The Shifting Social Foundations of Public Trust in Taiwan's Military." So please, Josh, the floor is yours. You can share the slides, and when the 15 minutes are gone, then I will make a sign for you that you have maybe 2-3 more minutes to speak, and then we'll have Q&A.
Okay.
And just a reminder, dear colleagues, you can also type the question in the chat in case, for example, you are afraid of forgetting it until the presentation is done. So please don't hesitate and type the question in the chat.
Sorry, I'm just trying to on my PowerPoint. Can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, it's an honor to have the opportunity to share my research with Lin Songhong and Li Junying with with Ukrainian friends at a time when Taiwan is wondering if it could be the next Ukraine. So the topic of our paper is the shifting social foundations of trust in Taiwan's military. So why is it important to research public trust in the military? First and most importantly, Taiwan is facing an existential threat of military annexation by China, and public trust and support toward the military is crucial. As we've witnessed in Ukraine, military society collaboration and solidarity has been essential in Ukraine's resistance.
There is something with this, with the connection. We are not hearing you well. And also maybe you can share the full screen with the slides. Would it be?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes. Can you talk? Again, it's not that clear with the sound. Something is with the sound, with the connection. Do you want to try to mute the video so that maybe the connection is easier without the video? We cannot hear you well, unfortunately, Josh.
But I want to.
Can I suggest that you try to mute the video?
It must be the connection.
Can you try to mute the video?
Try to use a few. I'm not sure how to do it.
But now it's okay, actually. Now we can hear you and we can see you and we can see the presentation as well.
Yes.
You can,
Josh, turn on the full page presentation. Full page for the PowerPoint. Otherwise, it's too small.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
We don't see the full page. We don't see the full page. Can you share the full screen so that we see the full page, please? Now we see the slides sharing, but with all the notes that you have, not the full screen of the slides.
Okay.
It's in the bottom where you have this slider with zoom in, zoom out. There is a full screen, so you could share the full screen in the bottom of the page. No, the bottom of the whole screen. Go down with the mouse.
Yeah.
It's next to volume.
Even more down on the behind the nodes. It's like the screen thing. Yeah, this down, more down.
Sorry.
Yeah, and then to no, not this slider, but the button next to the slider. Yes, this one. Perfect. Yes.
This one? Okay.
Just type on it and it should open the full screen presentation for us. If you're sharing the full screen, because if you're sharing just one tab, we will not see it. Can you share the full screen in Zoom?
Okay.
Can you stop sharing now and then start sharing once again? So you stop sharing this screen, stop sharing, and start sharing again, choosing among all the windows in Zoom, sharing full screen. And then you open the presentation as a full screen.
Okay.
It's also possible that you send the slides to me and we can proceed with Mikolaj's presentation now and after that move to yours back and I will share the slides for you. Is it okay with you?
That's okay. Yes, I'm so sorry.
It's okay, all good. You can send it to the email that you have, and I will download it, and then I will show it after Mikolaj's presentation. Since we know now that he will have a class, so we need to make a little bit of a shift.
Yeah, that's a very good idea, and actually that would make it both easier for Josh and myself. So I am sharing the. Thank you for that, and thank you, Josh, for giving me floor. And I will be as brief as possible, and I will try now. I'll see whether I can actually share the slides with you. Let me go on with this. And I will see whether you see my slides. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
You do? Yes? All right. So very briefly, first of all, I am very happy to be here with you, and thank you for organizing the panel and giving me this opportunity to share with you some of the work and some of the results we have done within the Polish national election study that I ran with my colleagues at the SWPS University in Warsaw. I am going to talk about the socio-military potential and to be more precise about the citizens' readiness to defend the country, something that is most probably interesting for all of us. The aim, the main objective behind the project is to actually explore the determinants of citizens' readiness to defend the country. I will skip actually the context because you are all very familiar. Because you are interested in the issue, that's one thing, and secondly, because we have already discussed the context to some extent. So, why we are studying the citizens' readiness to defend the country? Well, first of all, because the war is just behind, and secondly, we are threatened, and we need to actually investigate to what extent our population is ready to defend the country. This is a sort of a very first draft, and we start from the usual suspects. So we start with structural variables, and we explore how gender, age, education, class, political ideology, or military experience impact the defense willingness. I will skip, because I have only 10 minutes or 12. I will skip the overview of the theoretical perspectives on defense willingness, and I will go straight to empirical findings. But before, I will just briefly present you with my hypothesis. We, in this study, I expect that for example, men are more likely than women to declare willingness to defend the country, that younger individuals are more likely to defend the country than the older people, that those with higher education are actually less likely to declare willingness to defend the country because of the pacifism and reluctance to defend the country among the better educated people and at the academies and universities, and so on and so forth. And of course, this is probably very, very important. The hypothesis 6 and 7. First of all, I believe that the prior military experience has a positive impact on willingness to defend the country. And I also believe that right-wing political preferences and right-wing ideology, which is more militaristic in most cases, it is actually leading people to be more willing to defend the country than the left-wing people. So I will start with some descriptive statistics. The data I am showing is the Polish National Election Study from 2023, but also an extra study that we did just a couple of months ago in the summer this year. So what you see here is the difference between 2023 and 2025. The question is very simple. Are you ready to defend the country, either as a soldier or as a civilian? And as you see, there is an interesting shift between 23 and 25. In 23, the number of those who were ready to defend was smaller. It actually went up. Well, if we, for example, focus on definitely yes answer, you will see that it went up from 12.7 to 28.4. In the next couple of, this is the same data but presented in a more simple way. So those people who say yes went up from 50 to 62, which is quite a number. Quite a number. By the way, I am not aware of any comparative study done on well in our region. So if there is any data that would compare Poland with other countries like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Bulgaria, etc., give me a sign, because I would be very, very interested in seeing this data. In the rest of my presentation, I focus on data from 25, which is the newest and the more fresh, and I start with well, something quite simple: the comparison between men and women. As you see, and this is not surprising, most probably, the difference is. It is quite a difference. Women are less likely than men to answer positively to the question about readiness to defend the country. Also, when we test the second hypothesis, well, it's not a proper statistical test. It is just a bivariate comparison, but we see a clear pattern. The younger you are, the more likely you are to defend the country, and the older you are, the more reluctant you are. When we combine gender and age, you see, I mean, you can do it in, well, differently. There are several ways to do it. I split the population into those under 50 and over 50, and also males and females. And what we see is that it's actually more the gender than the age. There is the difference between males under 50 and over 50 is not. It's negligible. Among women, there is a difference, but you need to bear in mind that there is a well, significant difference in life expectancy between males and females in Poland, which means that the group over 50 among females has a much higher variation and variance in age. Basically, there is plenty of older women, and the older men are a smaller and less diverse in terms of age, much smaller group. The next thing is the military training. This is something that I find interesting because, well, first of all, there is a clear gender pattern because in our country, in general, females were not, even when we had a popular training, military training, and we had it until 2011. No, sorry. Well, 2009, 10. It depends whether you think about the implementation of the law or the end of the previous law. However, it's more than 15 years so already, and you see that there is a very clear gender pattern, but there is also an age pattern. Males over 50 are quite well trained. Still, almost 40% are not trained, but this number among the males under 50 is much, much worse. Only 17% are those who actually did some military training. Among females, this is completely. I mean, it's an irrelevant question. The number of females who are trained is negligible. In order to properly test the hypothesis, we move from bivariate analysis to multivariate analysis. And as you see, it turns out that only 3 out of 7, seven variables are statistically significant in terms of predicting or influencing the answers to the question about readiness to defend the country. These are gender, age, and military service, previous military service or military training. And I will move to conclusion. The good thing, I mean, from the point of view of the social coherence and also from the point of view of the resilience of the Polish society, the good thing is that actually there are no significant differences between religious group, education group, class group, or classes and political groups. This is a very important finding, I believe. The only thing that matters is whether you are a male or not, which, by the way, matters for many other reasons, whether you are younger or older. And again, we know that over a certain age, your usefulness for the army it's limited. And then also the third thing, which is quite obvious, is the military experience. So I think that the main conclusion of this study is that the willingness to defend the country cuts across traditional social, cultural, or ideological divides or cleavages. And the only things that really matter are gender and age, and we can do very little about it, and the military training or military background. And this is the thing that we actually can work on. This paper is inter alia. Also, one of the my aim with writing this paper is also to actually start a discussion about the compulsory military training in Poland. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your reaction and to your questions. And as I said before, I unfortunately at 1 p.m. I need to run. So thank you very much, and I'm looking to your questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mikolaj. You're actually 2 minutes ahead of 15 minutes time limit for the presentation.
Yeah, I was speeding.
Yeah. So we have Q&A for you now. And yeah, let's start with Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very timely presentation, research. Very interested utilitarian question. Is it published already, or is it about to be published? Because I would love to
be. Yeah, it's about to be published in a volume that we are producing together with colleagues from the Institute of Sociology of the
fantastic.
Ukrainian.
Can you? Yeah, that's fantastic. Can you send us a PDF, or because I would love to quote it in a
once I'm ready, in I think in 2 or 3 weeks. The deadline is, I think, 10 December. So I will send the PDF before we publish, and you will get access to the full paper.
Fantastic. And just a quick question, because it's with Josh, we went to Poland, to Warsaw last year, and again this summer with my colleagues Jay and Honglun, we went to Warsaw and Krakow, and we had discussion with our colleagues from the Polish Academy of Science, and we were looking for such a study. So I'm sorry I didn't meet you at that time. But a quick question: we have also similar. Our Institute of Sociology is conducting similar surveys with this kind of question on willingness to fight, and Josh and I have been helping to prepare the questionnaires of some of them. I remember myself being at odds with an old woman. Not so old. Maybe around 70 years old, but she was in charge. She was the tenant of a restaurant. And when I asked her the question, would you be really willing to fight in case of China attacking Taiwan? And she looked at me and said, look, what do you want an old lady like me to do? To take a weapon and fight? And I say, well, why not? And I had in mind, what the people in Ukraine are, some of them, even old lady, took the weapon. But I say, no, look, maybe we should rephrase our question, but it's there is many ways to be willing to resist against military aggression. You are a tenant of a restaurant. You can cook for the soldiers. So I wonder if you have this kind of slightly different way to ask the question. It's less about willingness to fight, but willingness to resist against the aggression.
Like participate in resistance, kind of.
Yeah.
So actually, the question is phrased: are you ready to defend the country either as a soldier or a civilian? And as far as I remember, there are also some other questions which actually go deeper into the different types of activities that you can do, not only taking a gun and be in the trenches and just shooting the enemies, because of course you are right that I don't expect the lady in her 70s to actually fight in the front line, but I do agree that if she is either you stay or cook for the soldiers, or just stay and try to live normally, or you just run away. There is a huge difference. And what I have seen in Kyiv, and I was in Kyiv in March. I was planning now to go to Kharkiv, but I couldn't but Edwin Bendik went to Kharkiv and he's now there. So what I have seen, that was my impression, that all the people were, fighting in a way, also in the restaurants, bars, partying at night. That's a kind of resistance that well, everybody tries to do what they can do in order to resist and to defend the country, and even going for a beer with the friends and maintaining the restaurant or bar or pub. It's a sort of instead of running away, that's a kind of resistance, and this is a kind of your part in defending the country in a funny way. So to cut the long story short, yes, we have other questions, but I have no doubt that if we plan to do, or anyone plans to do, a comparative study of this sort, that the questionnaire should actually address all kinds of activities, also the activities that you mentioned. Thank you.
And we have another question from Diana and also from Bogdan in the chat. Let's start with Diana's question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to tell you that I put 3 references in the chat for you to look at. These are the studies we have already, and to my knowledge, there are a lot of studies in English, and yeah, so there are a lot, and you could take a look at these ones. So this was a remark. My question is, or it's rather a remark, since I participated in this kind of research as well. To my knowledge, in order to understand the situation, most probably we need some qualitative methodology as well. Because this quantitative, it does not measure accurately. Because as Paul said, there are a lot of cases. For example, imagine if you're a woman, you are 45 years or 40 years, you have 2 small kids. Come on, how could you go and defend your country in an armed way? I mean, who will take care of the children? There are a lot of questions like this, because theoretically, of course, I could answer like that, yes. But in practice, practically, and then bearing in mind these various situations, what do we measure? Because what we have in chat, actually, we had that question. What does it mean? Like this quantitative measurement sometimes is not quite accurate, I'm afraid. Yeah, what do you think?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I basically qualitative data is priceless when you want to understand properly the phenomenon. So as I said, I treat this approach to the issue as just a first step, and I have quickly went through the references. Thank you for that. But again, this is either on the Baltic states or Lithuania, and this is. I'm very happy that something has been done already, and actually there is, especially one of these is about the 30 years of evolution of the willingness to defend the country. But now I would like to see something more comparative, because probably there are cultural differences, there are institutional differences, and well, the sad thing is that actually we need to do that, because without knowledge we cannot properly. It's not autotelic. It's also very pragmatic, this knowledge, or practical, if you wish, because without this knowledge, we cannot properly prepare to invasion, attack, whatever will happen, and most probably it will happen. So I think that this kind of research is not only interesting, but it's very, very much and heavily significant in our situation. Both Lithuanian and Polish, but also Slovak, Czech, Latvian, Finnish. That's an interesting case. Finland. So there is I am looking forward to any kind of cooperation, and actually I would like to see a project done together, and of course Ukraine as a. But the Ukrainian situation is slightly different because of the obvious reasons, right? Different in sociological terms, so to phrase it. So thank you, and I really hope to go further with this issue and with our research interest for mutual benefit, I believe.
Do we have still like 5 minutes for one more question? Because I would like to ask something that is based on also what we have in the chat from Bogdan. Do you have like 5 minutes more?
Yeah. I mean, I will go in. I mean, 2 to 1, something like that, because I need just to prepare, the presentation, and I need to start at 1. Sorry for that, but we have planned it for 2.5 hours, and now it seems that the topic is very, very hot and interesting. So yeah, go on.
So we have 2 questions from Bogdan, but since I'm moderating, I would also take an advantage on adding something from my side to these questions. So Bogdan is asking, given the low level of military training among the population in Poland, but high level of readiness to defend the country, do you see a risk that this readiness is rather declarative than the practical in case of escalation? And following that, how would you evaluate the impact of the readiness of Polish citizens who are currently serving in the armed forces of Ukraine to become a kind of game changers in the Polish society, resistance, readiness? And I would like to add to these questions from my side, because we were studying Ukrainian society just before the full-scale war started in January 2022, in December 2021, and we also were observing this high level of readiness to defend the country. However, if going, let's say, anthropologically, ethnographically, yes, we would not be able to observe enough courses, programs to train civilians for the resistance, for taking to participate, to join the resistance as civilians or as a kind of people who are prepared for the realities of the military attack from any kind of attack, let's say. So would you say that there is enough offer for this kind of military training? And we are not speaking now about the military training in the past that you had in your questionnaire, but the training for civilians right now in Poland. So people who would be ready to resist, but they don't have the knowledge, the skills for that. Are they actually seeking for this kind of training? Are they seeking this kind of training from people who already served, let's say, in the armed forces of Ukraine and went back to Poland and can share this knowledge on the, let's say, regular basis, like just pass the 1 month training and get some knowledge on the first aid in the battlefield or in the civilian life? This is something that is helpful also in civilian life. Sorry for taking a bit long for this question. So
no, but this is very, actually it's very timely and it's very to the point, and the brief answer would be no. The potential comes from the cultural heritage, and it comes from our culture, and most probably, especially in the time of a proper, so to phrase it, invasion, this will work, because there is a tradition. I would say too much of this tradition of martyrdom, resistance, fighting against, especially the Germans, but also the Russians. So in the case of a military attack, and especially in the case of military invasion, it would work. I mean, this traumatized society will be most probably quite difficult to be entirely defeated, right? With some sort of underground state and all these, and of course with a lot of casualties. But in the modern world, war, and in the modern era, and in the war like the war that is now happening in Ukraine, and this kind of attack and invasion, I think that this cultural background and cultural potential, I think it's a kind of potential, kind of capital, but it's very, and of course, it's not in the genes, but it's deeply rooted in our culture. And we have actually observed it just in the very first month of the invasion in 22. I mean, this kind of solidarity, and it was not the state, it was the society. But then it faded away quite quickly. Actually, March was marvelous in a sense that the people were really in this very alerted mode, so to phrase it. But it faded away. So I think that that culturally we are still, because of the many traumas, and especially the Second World War and then communism, which petrified the trauma of the Second World War, just like in the Soviet Union. So this is a kind of capital and potential. But from the point of view of the state and of the programs and projects and readiness of the state to train the people, this is way there are too few, and this is too little, basically. And I don't know about the numbers of those Poles who are serving on the front, and they could be, but there are, as far as I know, there are no ideas, and there are no programs that would make use of these people anyhow. Plus, I don't know whether this is, to what extent this is a public information, and to what extent this is, more of a military secret, basically. So I see the potential in this, but on the other hand, I don't see much being done. Maybe this is, under my radar for one reason or another. But I don't think so. I think that a sort of military cooperation with the Ukrainian army, that would be more beneficial. But actually, again, this is not easy now, because for obvious reasons. And if any kind of treaty is signed, the Ukrainian army and whole the Ukrainian state and society will have their own problems with the veterans. Probably one of the ideas would be to send them to other countries, to the neighboring countries, so they can train people. That would be an idea, but again, you cannot use all of them, right? We know that the veterans, after the war, after the peace treaty is signed, it's a problem. It was the problem in the Balkans in the 90s. It was the problem after the first war, after the second war. So it will be the problem, most probably. Well, if the Polish state could, and the other bordering states could do something, that would be great. But this is the first and foremost the Ukrainian internal problem. So yes, I see a potential, and no, I don't see any moves towards using these people in the current situation in Poland. I think I answered though most probably in an imperfect way, but I need to run. It was I will use this the last moment just to thank you for a very good and very inspiring meeting. Quite long, but very, very inspiring. And I regret I need to leave you, but I need to go and talk about democracy to the undergraduates. So once again,
thank you very much for joining.
And we keep in touch. And once I am ready with the PDF, I will send it to Olga and Tetiana, and then or maybe because we have our email, so I will distribute the paper among you. Once again,
thank you,
Mikolaj. Thank you.
Looking forward to
good luck with your class.
cooperation in future.
Thank you. Bye, and see you soon, I hope.
Bye. Enjoy.
Dear colleagues, we have the final presentation, and I'm sorry not for raising it up that we are late comparing to the schedule that was in the program, but also considering that we were intended to also have a conversation about the text, the chapters. So maybe for us who are contributors, it's not that crucial, so we can stay a little bit longer. Is everyone okay with that? Yeah, perfect. So let's move on to our final presentation from Josh. And as we agreed, I'm sharing the slides with you.
Thank you. So sorry.
Yeah, okay. And do you see the slides now? And Josh,
Yes.
please tell me when I should.
Okay. Can you go to the third slide?
To the third.
Third one, yes. Okay. So this is my basic research question. Have the social foundations of public trust in Taiwan's military changed? Okay, next one. So the literature on public confidence in a country's military suggests that along with factors endogenous to the military, like performance and professionalism, individual level variables, including political party identification, ideology, demographic factors, can have a significant impact on public confidence. Many of the more rigorous quantitative studies using survey research of trust in the military focus on the recovery of trust among Americans in our military after the Vietnam War. These studies showed the limitations of endogenous factors in explaining confidence in the military. Despite unsuccessful wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and the torture of prisoners at Abu Ghraib prison, trust in the US military continued to rise. Research on 50 years of polling on trust in the military by David Burbach at the Naval War College found partisanship or political party identification to be the strongest predictor of confidence in the US military. In the case of Taiwan, partisanship would seem to be important due to the military's history as a party army of the Chinese nationalist regime during Taiwan's authoritarian period. Next slide. So there's a major gap in the literature on public trust in Taiwan's military. The only existing studies using survey data on trust in the military do not discuss historical context. So meanwhile, several studies on military developments and reform cite historical factors as an enduring source of public distrust, but they don't provide empirical data to test this hypothesis that there's still a lot of distrust because of the military's historical legacy. So we're trying to fill this gap. Next. So this paper uses mixed methods. We adopt a socio-historical approach to first discuss the evolution of military society relations in Taiwan and to identify key cleavages in Taiwan society that might affect public trust in the military. We then use quantitative survey data analysis to test the influence of several variables on public trust. We assume that individual level orientation toward the military as an institution are shaped by interrelated historical and social factors. In particular, we examine whether trust is affected by key interrelated cleavages in Taiwan's society related to national identity and to Taiwan's relationship with China. First, we look at political party identification, whether one leans toward the pro-unification KMT or the pro-independence DPP. Second, we look at province of origin, whether an individual or his or her paternal relatives came to Taiwan with the KMT in 1949 or were there before that in earlier waves of migration. Third is one's preference regarding political relations with China, whether one favors the status quo, unification, or independence. And finally, the fourth aspect is national identity, whether one has an exclusively Taiwanese identity, a dual Chinese and Taiwanese identity, or an exclusively Chinese identity. Next. So after explaining the relevance of these social and political cleavages to the military, we examine opinion survey data, looking at both longitudinal data from periodic waves of the World Values Survey and Asian Barometer Survey, and then at a cross-sectional national survey by the Taiwan National Defense, called the Taiwan National Defense Survey, which was conducted by the Institute of National Defense and Security Research in March of 2024. Next. So Taiwan has always been an object, not a subject in war. Taiwan has been the object of imperial great power struggle for centuries, but Taiwan has never had a military established by Taiwanese. Taiwanese people have never fought as a collective subject in war. Taiwan was pacified under Japanese rule, and Taiwanese were not recruited into regular units of the Japanese Imperial Army until World War II. After World War II, the Republic of China Armed Forces took over the island's defense, and they remain the armed force on the island today. Next. So during the immediate post-World War II period, and after the nationalist regime's retreat to Taiwan from the mainland in 1949 and its implementation of martial law, the military served the authoritarian regime as a tool of domestic repression and social indoctrination. In February 1947, in what is now called the February 28th massacre, the Republic of China Armed Forces turned its guns internally on Taiwanese demanding greater self-rule, killing an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 people, including many of Taiwan's educated elites. This catalyzed the Taiwan independence movement and created what Wang Honlun calls the anti-external regime frame of war. So the KMT established what is called the Garrison Command to protect the emigre regime from domestic opposition through a secret military police apparatus. Political dissidents were tried under military law in what is known as the White Terror. Taiwan's current, importantly, many of the dissidents tried in military courts would go on to be leaders of the Democratic Progressive Party, Taiwan's current ruling party. In the photo at the bottom right is an infamous military trial of pro-democracy activists in 1979 called the Kaohsiung Incident, in which a future chairman of the DPP and a future vice president were sentenced to jail under military law. Next. Thanks. So the Republic of China Armed Forces was a Dangjun, called party army. Military officers had to be KMT members, and a political commissar system was run by the Political Warfare Department. The upper echelon of the officer corps was stacked with mainlanders who had arrived with the KMT in 1949. So local Taiwanese access to leadership positions in the military was very limited. So the officer corps was not representative of the broader population. Military leadership was not viewed as a career path for non-mainlanders, and contact of local Taiwanese with the military was mainly as conscripts. The table on the right shows the complete domination of the upper-level officer corps by mainlanders during the martial law period. Next. In the post-martial law democratization period, Taiwan has achieved civilian control of the military, but limited indigenization. The KMT withdrew its party organizations from the military, and a nationalization process was completed with new national defense laws passed in the year 2000, which institutionalized civilian control of the military and political neutrality of the armed forces. However, indigenization of the military has been limited. The current senior officer corps is dominated by second generation mainlanders. The military retains many symbols of Chinese nationalism and its party army history. Most importantly, perhaps, officer education continues to celebrate the Huangpu spirit, Huangpu Jingsen, of the military academy in southern China, where the KMT Revolutionary Army was founded. The picture on the right symbolizes this lack of indigenization. The picture shows patches with the symbol of China still worn by some Taiwanese soldiers today as they prepare to resist annexation by China. Next slide. This history allows us to surmise that during the martial law period, the social foundations of trust in the military were support for the KMT being a mainlander and having a Chinese national identity, while on the other hand, promoting a Taiwanese identity, democratization, or Taiwan independence likely led to fear and distrust of the armed forces. However, in the democratization period, elite cues from the two major parties regarding the military have diverged. In 2005, the KMT and China's Communist Party agreed to an aspirational goal of a peace agreement. The KMT de-emphasized military deterrence relative to accommodation through trade and dialogue under a one China framework. KMT President Ma Ying-jeou focused more on rooting out corruption in the military than on defense preparedness, while DPP President Tsai Ing-wen made military reforms and domestic weapons production a top policy priority, improving relations between the DPP and the military. Next slide. So now let's move on from history to analyzing data on public trust in the military. The first step in this research was to aggregate the existing longitudinal data on trust in the military from the World Values Survey and Asian Barometer. In this slide, we've divided the data into presidential terms. The overall trend was a steep decline in trust after the Lee Teng-hui era in the 90s. And we don't see a significant rebound of trust until the Tsai era, which ended last year. Next slide. So the World Value Survey and Asian Barometer Survey allow us to track trends in trust by party identification. And we find a general pattern of individuals being more trusting of the military when their party holds the presidency. The most important discovery in this data is the finding that during the Tsai era, DPP supporters were more trusting of the military, while KMT supporters expressed less trust. Next slide. So the discovery of high support among DPP supporters for the military, despite the military's historical legacy, led us to want to investigate whether a complete shift in the social foundations of trust in the military has occurred. So we used the Taiwan National Defense Survey from March of last year to test several hypotheses, which seem counterintuitive given the military's historical legacy. Hypothesis 1 is that mainlanders have lower trust in the military. Hypothesis 2 is that people with a Taiwanese identity have higher trust in the military. Hypothesis 3 is that individuals who favor de jure independence, Taiwan independence, have higher trust in the military compared to those who support maintaining the status quo or those who prefer unification with China. Hypothesis 4 is that DPP supporters have higher trust in the military. Okay, can you go 2 slides ahead? One more? Yes, thank you. That one, yes. So first, we found that mainlanders have lower trust in the military, suggesting that the disproportionate representation of mainlander generals doesn't equate to strong trust from fellow mainlanders. Second, individuals with an exclusively Taiwanese identity have higher trust in the military relative to those with a dual identity or a Chinese identity, showing that the military's retention of Chinese nationalist symbols doesn't deter support from those with a strong native identity. Third, individuals who lean towards Taiwan independence have the highest trust in the military, while those who believe Taiwan will unify with China express the weakest trust. This suggests that many supporters of independence do not hold the military's past repression of independence advocacy against it. Fourth, KMT supporters were significantly less likely to trust the military, while DPP supporters were significantly more likely to express trust. This demonstrates that the close historical bonds between the KMT and the military are not necessarily a strong source of goodwill toward the armed forces among KMT supporters. Finally, in conclusion, we find that the traditional social foundations of trust in Taiwan's military appear to have shifted, showing the success of the military's nationalization process, despite its lack of movement toward being a truly indigenized Taiwanese army. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Oh, so you stop at this point with the full presentation?
Yes.
Or...
Yes.
Okay. So the conclusion slide, do you need it? No. Or...
No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Actually, it was almost 2 minutes ahead of the time. So I will stop sharing the slides and we can move on with the Q&A. Yes, Olga, please, but unmute yourself. Yes.
Thank you. I put my question in the chat, but I can allow it. As I understand, correctly, your findings show that the strongest trust now comes from groups historically alienated from the military, which traditional pro-military constituencies trusted less. Does this indicate true reconciliation or simply a strategic recalibration maybe under external threat? And how durable is this reversal if the threat environment changes?
Okay, it's a very good question. I think the pattern that we see is that after 1990, in the mid 90s, actually, half of DPP supporters already trusted the military, which means that many of them had already forgiven the military for past transgressions. And what we find is that there's a pattern of when my party's in power, I trust the military more. So it seems like military trust is more of a function of overall political trust than it is of historical factors. So we'll have to wait until the next party turnover to see if this kind of pattern continues. But I believe that it may be permanent, because I think that DPP supporters of Taiwan independence have strongly prone to a motivated bias to trust the military, because they have no choice. If they have the most to lose if Taiwan is annexed by China. So we see if you look at, I don't discuss that in this paper, but if you look at confidence in the military's ability to defend Taiwan, you see a huge difference between the pro-independence and unificationists. The KMT has practically given up on the military, its ability to defend against China, whereas you see DPP supporters have a very strong confidence in the military, which this difference between the two seems very odd, because Taiwan has a close, everyone in Taiwan is impacted by the military in some way because of conscription. So you would think that people would know, well, our military is about this strong, but there's a huge gap between the two in confidence that the military can defend the island. So I focus on institutional trust, but I think that overall, this shift may be permanent.
Mm-hmm. I see. Thank you. And if I may add a question,
Sure.
I see a certain kind of post-authoritarian paradox. The question is, how does a military with deep roots in an immigrant party army, once associated with repression, convert itself into an institution trusted by the very groups it marginalized? Is trust driven by institutional transformation or by change in public identity? And that's right.
I think it's both. I think actually during the martial law period, the 228 massacre occurred in 1947, and then the KMT retreated to Taiwan in 1949 and established martial law. During that period, I'm sorry, can you repeat your question again?
Concerning first of all, transformation of the trust to the army, which is historically was as
right.
immigrant, I
I'm
don't
sorry.
know, immigrant party army, and who then produced the very strong authoritarian regime, support the very strong authoritarian regime in Taiwan, and turn off to the mass support or support from the many groups of population.
So even during the martial law period, I think the KMT leadership realized that it needed to mend relations between the military and the population. So they had some programs like the military would help farmers with harvests, and they would run summer camps for children. And veterans were recruited to work on public works projects, some of the biggest projects, like the road that goes over all the way over the mountains from west to east in Taiwan was built by veterans. So if you weren't involved in political activities, there were things that the military did to try to mitigate that it's a negative image. And then in the democratic period, I think the process of nationalization was quite successful. In 2000, when Taiwan passed new defense laws, from that time on, I think people believe that the military really keeps political neutrality and that they are under civilian control. So I think it's a combination of also there's a long period of time now, I think, between that repression that lasted until the late 80s and today.
Okay.
Sure.
So yeah, any other comments or questions to Josh's paper, the presentation, more than a paper? Or maybe paper if you were you had a chance to read through the text, to go through the text, and no, not at this point, right? Paul has the question, and actually we still have the question from Bogdan to our first presentation that was a couple of hours ago, but we remember about this question and we also need to address it.
No, not a question, just a quick remark. I think Olga just asked two very good questions, and I would like to recycle the way you put it in perhaps in our general introduction to the monograph. I think it's you summarize very well the problem. I'm happy that I guess it was helpful for you to come to Taiwan, because now I think you understand very well. I like your idea of post-authoritarian paradox, and it related to the fact that it was an émigré regime. Émigré regime, in other words, it's a colonial regime, right? It's colonial. So Taiwanese have lived in several stages of colonial periods. Even the French tried to colonize Taiwan, but they failed because they were not good enough. Taiwanese were too strong. So the Japanese were stronger than the French, and they succeeded. And then the KMT regime came, and you know the word, maybe you heard that when you came to Taiwan, you know, the famous word for that is the dogs went away, now the pigs have come. So the dogs were Japanese because they were urusai. They are yelling at you, giving you orders, asking you to do this and that. But the pigs are worse. The pigs do the things like Josh show you in the slides of like 228, and so it's for me, Taiwan, we are in a situation of Ukraine before the annexation of Crimea. We haven't had that momentum that create this very large national consensus, as Michal shows us for the case of Poland. We now see a much stronger consensus that go beyond age, class, religion, not gender, and that was interesting, but it's, yeah, no, just a quick remark. I thank you very much, Olga, for your, and I would like also to acknowledge all the very good question that Bogdan asked. I don't know who is Bogdan, is in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Where is in Kiev or Kharkiv?
I think this is the question to Bogdan.
Well, anyway, thank you very much. So shall I answer to
Yeah,
Bogdan?
that was the question, the first one actually in the chat was to you, Paul, about...
Yeah, I have it. How can you evaluate current Japan cultural trends in context of militarization? Are there any state-driven militarization influence in Japanese popular culture and media cultural products? Yes, of course. I don't know if you are aware of the most famous example of that is a man called Kobayashi Yasunori. I put it in the chat if you want to. It's a terrible ultra right-wing manga. It's a manga. And the title is like Michael Mann's book, is on war, about war. I know, Sensoron in Japanese is Sensoron. And when this manga was published in the, I think 25 years ago, it was it was a scandal in Japan and also in Taiwan, because it was like it was perceived as an apology of imperial Japan. So if I use Honglun's term, the Great East Asian Warframe. Yes. What else could I say? But more recently, I don't know, to be honest. I haven't seen such. I mean, maybe there's a couple of popular culture encouraging such militarization, but it's not as strong as not as popular as Kobayashi Yasunori was. But you know, in our paper, I try to tune down the criticism of ultra right-wing military narratives, not because I have turned myself into an ultra right-wing. Don't worry, I'm not like that. But because I think this is not the most important issue right now. As I mentioned, and this is a strong difference with Poland and even Taiwan, the willingness to fight, I mean, to defend the country in case of military attack in Japan is currently very low in the surveys. Nevertheless, I believe that if in the case of a real aggression from China, that will change. I guess much like Germany or Poland, or when you're faced to the wall and then it's like the existential threat on your nation, it becomes very real, then things become different. But for now, the left-wing pacifist anti-war narratives is quite strong and influential, and so they are very critical of, for example, the Takahashi Prime Minister declaration. I'm sorry, it's not exactly your question, but you understand that some questions are more relevant than others given the context. So it's your question is interesting, but for me, it's not central problem now. Thank you. Dziękuję. Dziękuję.
Yeah, дякуємо. Dear colleagues, if there are no questions, comments, reflections at this point with regard to all 5 presentations, papers, I would suggest to close the session. We had quite an intense 2.5 hours. And yeah, we did great job with presentations, with quite thorough commenting, and I hope that all presenters, including Mikolaj, who had to leave to the class, got the inspiration for further research, for maybe looking at the data or looking at the concepts that you are working with at maybe a different angle, different shift, or maybe you also got some fresh thoughts on what you're working on, and also with regard to the monograph, to the publication that is forthcoming, hopefully very, very soon. So I also want to thank to Olga, whose work on making this session happening is enormous, and including all the discussions with all the authors, and including the program, including the conceptual framework for framing everything that we had for today. So thank you, Olga, thank you all the presenters. I hope my moderating skills were not that bad in terms of timing, but yeah, when we have a good discussion, sometimes it's worth being a little bit delayed and have this time devoted to the intellectual stimulation. Yes, Paul.
Tetiana, would it be possible for you, Olga and I, to stay online? So I would like to discuss a little bit. I guess you are hungry because it's lunchtime for you, no?
That's all good. I just stopped the recording at this point.
Okay.
Before we end, I would like to add first my great appreciation to Tetiana for her brilliant, excellent moderation of our session. And let me sincerely thank each of you for exceptionally, from my point of view, and thought-provoking presentation, questions, and comments. I hope that that today's exchange will also feed directly into the completion of our collective monograph and inspire new comparative project and cooperation. So thank you so much.
Olga, Bogdan says he's in Kharkiv. I would like to send him my best solidarity, warm greetings, and I'm so impressed that you know, when I see the news that sometimes in Kyiv you don't only have 1 hour of electricity per day, so I guess in Kharkiv it's even more difficult. So I would like to express my deep admiration to Bogdan and all our colleagues in Kharkiv and Kyiv for their strength and braveness in this terrible war.
Thank you very much. I will pass your words to all my colleagues from Ukraine. And by the way, yesterday we have very kindest greetings from behind of Lithuania Sociological Association, presented by Diana at the opening session of our Congress. It was very warm, very exciting. And it is very, very important for all of us, especially for Ukrainians who stay in Ukraine during the full scale.
Diana, can you share with us your paper, your keynote yesterday? If it's you have is it written? Can you share?
You know, Paul, it was just a welcoming speech, like